and I will, as I said, I will continue from where we stopped last time. And really, it's where is it? Right. We'll go back to sharing again because yeah, because I want you to have a look at the text itself. Okay, so this is where we stopped. We were talking last time in chapter the chapter here about Goethe and his ideas about world literature. Really, this section, as I told you before, this section is a bit really important to tell us, you know, where actually the origin of world literature really came from. And this is really the section on Goethe, and he gave us a lot of you know, ideas and theoretical stuff. Sometimes we can accept them. Sometimes you may say, well, you know, I don't agree, or I don't believe that anyway. I mean, as I told you before last time, there are some maybe egocentric, or maybe some kind of, to some extent, some people may say this or may disagree to this, that there were some kind of arrogance in the German mentality here to say that all Europe can benefit from the German mind, the German culture, the German thought, and so on. And that's why he said the idea of translation started from there. So really, that's why here he's again saying that really world literature came because we need to exchange ideas and to understand each other, other cultures. And I think this is, you know, in many ways, this is true, and this is positive, and this is good. And I think this is what we are doing here, because at the end of the day, you may say, oh, why do we need to study all this, you know, for us as, you know, Omani students, for example? We say, yeah, well, it's really part of education, part of cultural orientation, and so on. So really, this is the meaning of world literature here, if you like, according to what Goethe really mentioned. As I said last time here, this sentence here at the end in my screen, as you can see it now, you see, he definitely, Goethe, definitely did not perceive of world literature as a canon of world masterpieces, meaning he didn't say only the most important novels or the most important plays only are world literature. He didn't say that exactly, or he didn't really mean that exactly, although, you know, people really started to believe this after him. And this is the sentence here. This is the meaning that rapidly came to be associated with the term after Goethe's death, with the rise of literary historiography as of the middle of the 19th century. And I think to some extent people still believe this, and maybe in a way I believe that myself to some extent, because yes, there are really great texts which are really very good. I mean, we can't deny that Shakespeare is a great writer, you know, or Milton, or, you know, Charles Dickens, or all this, you know. We have to say, yeah, these people are really master writers, whether we like it or not. But it doesn't mean we should exclude those other unimportant writers, maybe, or maybe neglected authors. And this is the idea. There are many, really, in reality, there are many neglected people. And they could be as important, as valuable, as great as maybe Shakespeare, or as Dickens, or whatever. But because of neglect, you know, we don't know them. And this is really the idea here, what world literature really is. It is any great text which has values and you know, which travels, again, as we say, beyond its borders. And that's why here Goethe gave us notes, or like like highlighting some ideas everywhere here in this. We see this, and I think this is where we stopped last time. He said, notice, as I said, all the nations review our work. They praise, censure, accept and reject, imitate and misrepresent us, open or close their hearts to us. All this we must accept with equanimity. Now, since this attitude taken as a whole is of great value to us. Again, as I said earlier, this, just now I said, could be. Some people may say, well, this is a little bit of arrogance to say that all other nations, need Germany at that time. Maybe, for Goethe at that time, saying this could be useful. Especially today, for example, I will give you a real example today. Everybody thinks, really today, everywhere in the world, they think that America is the nation that you should be, friendly with. Otherwise, you will be, outside the circle. And this is the idea, really. This is what we say here, the question of arrogance. And I think this is true. Now, again, notice in the next point here, he said in another letter, these were written as notes or ideas or in different letters in different places. But I highlighted for you here only the important thing or point. Number 3, point 3, he said, a world literature is in process of formation. That means it's always growing. And that's the idea. And I think that's true. Today, for example, an Omani novel or an Omani text or a Saudi text or a Chinese text is able to grow and process and, to develop into becoming a huge text or a world text. And I think that's what he means. Texts are world texts because they, in a way they develop, they change, they go into this form or this process of formation. Really, this is the idea here. And notice here that the nations are in favor of it and for this reason made friendly overtures. The German can and should be most active in this respect, and so on. He gives us again his German idea. Number 4, or point number 4, again he said, notice, I think again another point, he said, poetry is the most common of all mankind. Poetry is the common property, not poetry, common, well, poetry is the common property of all mankind, and that it is manifest everywhere and in all ages and hundreds of people. The only difference is that some express themselves a little better and are on top a little longer. And he goes on about the question of poetic talent. The poetic talent is not very rare and should not pride himself on having composed a good poem. In a way, he wants to say here, if you are writing a great poem, you think you are a great man or a great writer or a great poet, and so on. He said, he's saying here, don't really do this and don't think this, because he's saying poetry really is the ownership of everybody. It is a common ownership, like it's language. Like language is the ownership of all people. And yes, of course, he said, yes, there are people who maybe who are talented more talented. Yes, I think that's true. You know, talent is there. And the question he wants to say here is for poets not to be arrogant and to believe because they are great men because of their great talent. Well, talent is important, but it's not everything. Really, this is the question here. We can say, I don't know, somebody wants to come in. Yeah, I have now I have 34 people. I still have more than 35. Good. Okay. So really the idea here, I don't know why this, if I switch this on and I can't go back to that one. Anyway, can you see the screen now or no?
No.
Yeah. I have to share again. Yes. Yeah, you can see it now. So this is the idea he wants to say about talent, to say, you know, poets are talented, but they are, he wants to say that not only because of talent that they are world poets and, you know, world literature. And really this is what he was saying again about the old, again, notice here the last sentence he said, but this esteem for foreign productions should not stop from specific characteristics to declare them models. We should not think that the truth is in Chinese or Serbian literature, in, for example, Calderon or in the Naibolgian or whatever. In our pursuit of models, we sought always to return to the Greeks of antiquity, in whose works beautiful men is represented, or beautiful man is represented. The rest was, if you like, the rest we contemplate historically and assimilate from it the best as far as we can. The idea really he is saying, as I said, you know, it's not necessarily true that you have to go back to the classics and to the masters and you say, wow, this is the literature. And, you know, he's saying, no, you can go to any place, to any culture, you may find something really as valuable as, you know, the classics, okay? For example, in a way, sometimes we say, you know, for poets, you say, oh, are you al-Mutanabbi? As if people think al-Mutanabbi in Arabic poetry is, you know, as even his name, you know, he called himself al-Mutanabbi, as if to say, you know, as the great figure in everything. Now, really, the idea, that's what he was saying here, is true about world literature. He wants to say that world literature grows from, you know, can grow, can develop from any other culture. Certainly, that's true. And the next point I think in point number 6, because in number 5, I don't think there's anything important there. In number 6, he says, notice, world literature develops in the first place when the differences that prevail within one nation are resolved through the understanding and judgment of the rest. In other words, he's saying, again, the same idea, that world literature really develops and grows and is born because if you really connect and see others in the same way and value them and, you know, develop a consensus or a form of agreement that this is the best and this is better than that, and so on and so forth. Really, that's what we mean here, the understanding of others, judging this and judging that, and then you say, yeah, this is the best good, thing, really. That's the idea, I think, here, where he's saying, notice, within, he said, within one nation, or other nations could be, or among nations, are resolved through understanding and judgment of the rest, meaning other texts or other nations. You know, when you agree to say, yeah, I think this is a great poem because of this and this and that. Like, for example, in Arabic culture, for example, in Arabic literature, sometimes we say, well, Najib Mahfouz in Egypt is the best Arab novelist, for example. We say Egypt, etc. Well, yeah, maybe, because there is, you know, some kind of agreement that most people think this, and so on. You know, this is the idea about resolve, means to agree on a certain way. And I think this is in point number 7 and 8. I don't, yeah, there's here one thing I would again point here in this, where I highlighted this. Notice he said in this section on the next page, you can still see my screen, I hope. Notice he said, every nation indeed, when its turn comes, feels that tension, which, like the attractive power of physical bodies, draws one towards the other and eventually will unite in one universal sympathy, all the traces of which humanity consists. The endeavor of scholars to understand one another and compare one another's work is by no means new. And really he wants to say, again, this question of exchanging. And I think, you know, this is the idea when you say, you know, this novel is better than that one, because here you are comparing, you know, you are comparing and you are looking at this and that and that and those here and there all the time, and then you decide. You know, this is the idea when he said endeavor, the question of how many people are trying to see, for example, whether this novel is the best, whether that one is even more more important, and so on. You know, and this is what he means about this. And he said, I think there's one point here. He said that travel, the study of languages, periodical literature have taken the place of that universal language and establish many intimate and harmonious harmonious relations which it could never cultivate. Even the nation that devote themselves chiefly to trade and industry are most concerned with this exchange of ideas. Yeah, really this is the key word, as you can see. It's really, this is the key phrase in this here, that he wants to say, well, world literature is the result of exchange. Yeah, we exchange ideas, we exchange, you know, our own concepts, understandings of things, and so on. You know, when you go to another culture, you see how, you know, things may be connected or related or the same or different or whatever from your own culture. And really he wants to say that because of travel, because of trade, because of study of languages, because of studying and looking at other texts, reading other periodical literature, as he said, you know, any other literature or any other form of writing, you know, this kind of understanding universal thing, universal language, he said, you know, this question of uniting, maybe collecting, and maybe understanding other people's things, cultures, languages, concepts, ideas, you know, thoughts, ideologies, blah, blah, blah. All this really make what we call today world literature. Really, this is what he says here. As you can see, the question, he said, exchange of ideas. Let me put off this AC. Sorry. If you remember, I used to put off the AC in class, so I do it here in my own place. Yeah, are you following boys and girls?
Yes, doctor.
Everything is fine?
Yes, doctor.
You are not disagreeing with me, or you don't care?
No, I agree with you.
Okay.
Following.
I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, you don't care. Well,
I disagree, doctor.
remember all this introduction, as I told you, really, we are sort of running in a circle. All this introduction is trying to tell us what is world literature, really. And, you know, this is so many ways of saying it briefly, really. Again, we go back to point number 9 or 10. I read this in number 11. I think this is unusual. You can see I highlighted this because I thought this is interesting again. And as I said, you can see it's really the same. He's saying the same thing, but in a different way, or in different ways. Notice he said these journals, as they win an ever wider public, will contribute to, in the most effective way, towards the universal world literature for which we are hoping. Only we repeat, the idea is not that the nations shall think alike, but that they shall learn how to understand each other. And if they do not care to love one another, at least that they will learn to tolerate one another. And I think this is the word I told you about before. And I think it's a very nice word, really. The word tolerate. Tolerate really means to accept people, to really accept people and to take them and to say, okay, yeah, you're different from me, but you're not my enemy. You understand? You know, you speak different language from me, but you are not my enemy. You know, I don't hate you. And this is the idea here, the question of tolerance. And I think we have this in Arabic, we use the word at-tasamuh. At-tasamuh. And I think this is it, you know. And he's saying here, world literature, really, world literature means tolerance. Means tolerance. We tolerate each other. We accept each other. We study each other. We communicate with each other. He means cultures and languages and societies, and isn't it? And I think that's the very good thing about it. Notice, several societies now exist for the purpose of making the British Isles acquainted with the continent, and are working effectively and with a practical unanimity of opinion. We continentals, remember, is talking here, Goethe, remember, is in Germany, and Germany is in Europe, of course, and he said the British Isles, you know, the British Isles, you know, they are in a way part of Europe, but because they are separated a little bit by a small channel, you know, it's only about 33 miles distance between England or between Calais and the continent or Europe. So he's saying here, we continentals, meaning we Europeans, can learn from them. Me, who, you know, from them means, really, he means, you know, the British, the English culture. Again, notice, he said, them, the intellectual background of the time across the channel, what they are thinking and what their knowledge, judgments about things are. On the whole, we acknowledge gladly that they go about the work with intense seriousness, with industry and tolerance and general goodwill. And notice here, really, this is the nice word here, goodwill. And I think this is a very good thing. You say al-irada al-hasana. And I think I like this. You know, when you have this good intention, when you have really, when you are, you know, using your own good intention, you don't have, you know, that's why I said you accept people, you like them, you love them, you don't hate them. You take them, you accept them. And this is the idea of tolerance. It doesn't mean, you know, you are forced to do that. But I'm saying, looking, what he's saying here is to look at other culture and see what they can give you. Notice he said, the result for us will be that we shall be compelled to think again of our own recent literature, which we have in some measure already put to one side, and to consider and examine it anew. You know, afresh means to look back again at it and see how things really are. Maybe to re-examine things, to say, are we correct there? Are we, you know? And I think this is healthy, absolutely healthy, to re-examine your own ideas, to say, you know, am I okay? Have I done something really, you know, good as I should? Or was I wrong? And so on. And really this kind of revision is healthy. And that's what he's saying. And going over, you see, going over means to revise, rethink again, going over the whole field in which he worked, he meaning the author and the writer. And I think I like this sentence, or this really, this little paragraph here. And I think that's really true and very good. Okay? And I think that's the meaning. That's the purpose. If anybody asks you, why do you study world literature? Well, give them this these sentences. Say, we want to revise our own ideas, our own concepts, our own things, to accept ourselves and to accept others, to tolerate, to have goodwill, and to receive other goodwill from other people, and so on and so on. And again, to work in an industrious way, in a serious way, in an intense way, to re-examine things, and to be really able to measure things, re-measure things in a better way. Yeah, I think this is good, and this is healthy. Okay? And really that's what he's saying here. In the next few, as you can see, I did not highlight the rest because I thought he was repeating the same thing with no really good thing. As you can see in all these pages here, I don't think there are really absolutely important stuff to be sort of memorized. But in a way, he's repeating similar stuff. There's nothing really new, if you like, here. Again, you know, he's highlighting. I think all the ideas here are repeated. That's why I did not highlight it. Okay, and I think that's the end of it by our friend Goethe. And I think you know, it's really interesting to see how he you know, generalized all this about really what is world literature. Maybe I should conclude this last really paragraph, maybe to highlight exactly what he wanted to say. As I said, he repeated many times. Notice he said, in the case of the translation of my latest botanical studies, you know, he's giving more examples. As I said, that's why I did not highlight it. You know, I translated into my kind of French. He rewrote some, he rewrote them in his own, and I'm quite convinced that in that language they will be more generally understood than perhaps in German. A certain French lady appears to have thought of using this system already. She has the German translated to her simply and literally, and then proceeds to endow it with a grace peculiar to her language and her sex, meaning whether she's a woman or a you know, man or woman. These are the immediate consequences of a general world literature. The nations will be quicker in benefiting by each other's advantages. I shall say no more on this subject, for it is one which calls for a good deal of elaboration. You know, this is again, he wants to say about the good thing about translation. You know, even here, we study Goethe. Goethe wrote in German, and we are reading him in English. And, you know, this is again of the beauty of translation. And we study all these texts we have today with us, or in this course, all, well, not all, most of it is actually translated from other languages to English, because you remember we are studying English. Our department is English department, so that's why, you know, here. Of course, we have it in Arabic. Some of these, or most of these, are translated into Arabic, but I'm sure maybe, well, some of it is good translation, but sadly, really sadly, most of it is terrible translation. Now, the next figure, and I mentioned him or them both, Marx and Engels. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the two founders of what we call Marxism. And the word Marxism really came from his name, Marx. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the two main people who really established or found really what we call today communism or socialism, and all this question of, you know, in the world. And this happened, if you like, now more than 150 years, even 170 years back, because they were writing in 1850s, 1860s. As you can see here, Karl Marx, born 1818, died 1883. And Engels, again, 1820, and died 1895. So they were writing right in the middle of the 19th century. Both were German men. Both were German, actually Jews, both of them. And later on, they left Germany. They emigrated from Germany to London, to England, and they published most of their stuff in England. But of course, originally, it was all published in German and then translated into English. As you can see here, I gave a brief, well, not me, it's actually this book. Remember, as I said to you, I have reproduced this exactly as it is from its own origin. As I told you, I kept the pagination. Look here, 16, whereas my page here is 21. Okay? And even I kept the same thing about the beginning and end of lines to be exactly honest to the text, the original text. Notice here I say what they say again, as I told you, because they are Marxists, they are socialists, and they believe in society. And that's what, you know, when we say socialism, really is to do with society. When you think of the belief and the attitude of the ownership of society, we are all together. This togetherness really is what they want to say. And, you know, he, or both, I should say, Marx and Engels, both, you know, talked about world literature to say about the question of literature. Literature is the ownership of society. Like language, language is the ownership of society, not one particular person, not one particular author. There's no single author. The authorship is society. And I think this is maybe you don't believe this. Well, it's up to you. But the idea really, this is what he wants to say about it. The question of, as I said, socialism. Notice the distinction between the base, the forms of economic production, organization, or modes of production, from corporative liberalism and feudalism to capitalism and communism. Really, communism really comes from community. The word communist from community. Community means society. You know, you stick to your own society. You know, you say he comes from a certain community, isn't it? And that's why we say communism really is, as you know, meaning the whole society, if you like. Or later on, he talks about this, you know, about all societies. Again, notice, and the superstructure ideology or forms of social consciousness, such as religion, law, politics, and art. And he goes on. I don't know what's wrong with me here. Okay, I hope I'm all right. Right, so what he is saying here, notice, forms of social consciousness such as religion, law, politics, and art. And the sentence, if you like here, language in general and as an absence of literature in particular is another kind of social practice, and therefore is rooted in the material conditions of the base. This notwithstanding, literature is relatively autonomous. Literature is relatively, means not exactly, means somehow, relatively autonomous, for its relation with the base is not merely reflexive. As you shall see here, again, to say about the question of independence or autonomy, again, I think he said it here in the next paragraph, notice. Likewise, the intellectual creations of single nations, including literature, are not nation-specific any longer, but the common property of the world. And I think this is the idea he wants to say about this question here, about the world literature. I mean, the ownership of all societies, all the people. And that's why he said not only one single nation. You know, he wants to say it's the ownership of all other people. Therefore, you know, they are entitled to take it, to accept it, to work with it, and to believe in it, or to read it, and to think of it, and to accept it, and so on. And that's why really he used the word common property of the world there. And I think he said this, and I think it's very easy to understand, But you see, I highlighted only the last paragraph to say what exactly, you know. Well, it's not me, as I said. This is in the book. They gave this last paragraph. I think this is the idea about what really Marx and Engels believe, because, as I said, of their socialist ideas, their communist ideas, and therefore they think that literature is the ownership of all nations. And that's what he said. Notice, the bourgeoisie has, through its exploitation of the world market, given a cosmopolitan character to production and consumption in every country. To the great jargon of reactionists, it has drawn from under the feet of industry the national ground on which it stood. All old established national industries have been destroyed or are daily being destroyed. So notice here the question here about national, meaning now he wants to say now you can't exist on your own as a nation. You have to depend, you know, on other nations. And I think today this is true. You know, if you look everywhere around you, how many things you will find everywhere which have nothing to do with our, for example, own nation or our own country and so on. And I think this is what he said here about national industries and so on. Notice he said, they are dislodged by new industries whose introduction becomes a life and death question for all civilized nations, by industries that no longer work up indigenous raw material, but raw material drawn from remotest zones. Industries whose products are consumed not only at home, but in every quarter of the globe. Yeah, that's what I mean. You today, everywhere you go around, you find productions or you find products from all over the world, you know, starting from Chile till, you know, the end of China or Japan or anywhere else in the world. You find it here in Oman, for example, and in every country. And this is what he wants to say. You know, today he said, you know, we have to exchange. As we exchange raw or materials, you know, then that's how we exchange ideas, if you like. So he said, in place of the old wants satisfied by the production of the country, we find new wants requiring for their satisfaction the products of distant lands and crime. In place of the old local and national seclusions and self-sufficiency, we have intercourse in every direction, universal intercourse, interdependence, meaning, you know, exchange, you know, interdirection or intercourse or interindependence, meaning we communicate, we exchange with other people. And that's what he means there. Universal interdependence of nations. And as in material, also in intellectual production. The intellectual creations of individual nations become common property. What is written in English is not owned by the English. This is what he means. What is written in Arabic is not owned by the Arabs. Exactly. What is written in Oman is not owned by only Omanis. You know, this is the idea. So he wants to say it's intellectual creation. It's the ownership of all people. And that's why he said national one-mindedness and narrow-mindedness become more and more impossible. And from the numerous national and local literatures, there arises a world literature. And I think this is a good thing here about that. And I think I agree to this. I don't know. What do you think? Hello?
Yes, Doctor. I think
He said.
yeah, I think I also agree with him because by understanding other nations, seeing what they have unique, this will help us to develop more in our knowledge and experience. And even in literature, for example, when we expose our minds to their various ideas, their knowledge, their unique features in literature, this will enrich our literature also and our ideas, and may change some ideas in us, and may add or delete something in our own ideas. So I think I agree totally with him.
Yeah, so really this is the question here, that really we have to always think about, because the idea really is quite sensible when you think about it. You say, yeah, because when you look at about one-sidedness and narrow-mindedness is no more acceptable, because you can't live on your own. You can't live on your own, and that's why, in a way, now, for example, let me give you a real example. Why do you think Sultan Qaboos University has so many foreign teachers, non-Omani teachers? Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Really, this is in a way, there is a policy here that, yes, we should have in our university at least more than 50 or 50% of our teaching staff should be from outside Oman. Why? Because this is the idea. Because we want to have broader understanding of things. And that's what they mean, national one-sidedness, narrowness become more and more impossible. It's impossible to be on your own only. You don't want to see others. You can't. And that's why here you say, the idea that world literature really becomes like this. That's why we say world literature cannot be only local literature, cannot be only, national literature. It has to include others. And I think this is a very good idea, and I like it, and I agree with it totally. Now, we will conclude this, thank God, we will conclude this here with David Damrosch's conclusion here, and I hope that I can do it with you today. Now, David Damrosch, as I told you, the man who came to us as I told you, he attended our conference last February, and he was one of the key speakers. I think one of the best speakers of that conference. And he is, he wrote really a lot of stuff on world literature, as you can see here in this introduction. David Damrosch really gave us more examples about what is world literature. Here, of course, we see some of his ideas. Notice here, he gave, remember, this is an anthology not written by David Damrosch, but they are quoted and the way Damrosch thinks of world literature. And here, for example, they started to think of, or to give us briefly what or how things develop. First, they say Goethe coins a phrase, which is, as I said before, Goethe, yes, gave us the idea of what world literature, or he was the first one to use the word world literature. Notice world literature to encompass all literary works that circulate beyond their culture of origin, either in translation or in their original language. Again, I think I'm repeating the same thing. That means literature which is translated, which goes beyond its culture, which travels beyond its borders, and this is the idea. And again, notice here, I reached beyond its home base. Again, we say the effective life as world literature whenever and wherever it's actively present with the literary system beyond that original culture. You know, the same thing, really. I'm not really going to read all this, but it's repetition of what we said already. Again, here they're talking about going back to the idea of comparative literature. You say comparative. Where is the word coming from? Originally from comparative. And notice here the question of how the whole thing started, when you start to compare other texts, and so on. So the question of comparing, yeah, could be one reason why we understand. Yeah, when we compare things, because you want to see whether it's related to you, or whether you like it, or whether you accept it, or something. And really, this is the idea here when you say what here about the question of understanding, or you know, the common, he said, the common literary patterns, which, as he said, they provide the for any true global understanding of literature. You know, they are repeating the same thing. I'm not going to read that for you again because it's clear. Notice, world literature is not at all fated to disintegrate into the conflicting multiplicity of separate national traditions. Again, the same thing. World literature is to argue and to take, say, you know, or to compare it always to your own national literature. It's nothing to do, or completely to always compare it to your own national, because nationalism is something else. And that's what he said. He said it should not be in conflict. There should not be really this conflict between national and world literature. And really, this is the idea. Should not to disintegrate into the conflicting multiplicity of separate national traditions, nor on the other hand, need to be swallowed up in the white noise, etc. Like, for example, world literature is not infinite, is not ungraspable canon of works, but rather a mode of circulation and of reading, a mode that is applicable to individual works as the bodies of material available for reading, established classics and new discoveries alike. And I think this is the good thing about it. And I think we agree about it, to say, you know, world literature is not fixed. World literature is not the canon. It's not only Shakespeare. World literature is not those great, unbelievable texts. You know, this is the idea. He said, world literature is not infinite, meaning not touchable or ungraspable. No, you know. Again, he's saying world literature is something that we can exchange. And that's what he means, circle or circulation. a mode of circulation that we can. Today we like this, tomorrow we don't like it. And today we exchange this, next time we don't, and so on. So this is the idea about reading and the mode of reading, the way we read it, the way we accept it, the way we think of it, the way we value it. You know, this is what he means when he's saying a mode of circulation, a way of taking and accepting and exchanging. And he said, a reading and of reading, the way you read. Again, I said a mode that it is applicable to individual works, meaning how you apply that novel to your own self, to your own culture, to your own society, to your own novels at home. Are they applicable? Can we apply them? Can we use them? Are they good? Are they bad? You know, this question of all this, when he said a mode, means, you know, how we maneuver, how we take, accept, and reject, and so on, such texts into our own society, into our own, you know, he said, individual work or individual works. Okay? Again, he said, the idea here, these texts could be classical, should not be always classical. And that's why he said available for reading established classics and new discoveries, you know, new texts, you know. There are very good texts which were written maybe recently, maybe 10 years ago, or last year, or 5 years ago, or 50 years ago, which are really far more important, far more, if you like, better than the ones we have, you know, from Greek literature or Persian literature or Arabic literature. Doesn't mean, you know, this is the idea. He said, this is what he really mean about classics. Who said that classics are always classics? You know, that's really what he means. That's why he said, he wants to say, notice, never has been a single set canon of world literature. So he wants to say, are not fixed, are not sacred, are not stable. Canons can change. Now we don't, for example, we no longer study, for example, let's say, now we no longer study D.H. Lawrence, for example, or now we don't study Shakespeare anymore. Why? Well, maybe because, as you can see, it's something that society no longer is interested in this. And really there, like today, for example, you know, the question of reading today is miserable. How many people read these days? You know, always we have our mobiles. How many of you now have their mobiles with their hands? Hello?
No one, we're focusing on the lecture.
You don't have phones, doctor.
Really? Are you following with me? How do you follow with me?
We print the lecture.
From the laptop.
Papers.
From the laptop.
Really? You have it on paper?
Notebook.
What did you say?
You have it on paper? Sorry?
Yes.
Wow, this is good. Yeah, absolutely. That's yeah. I'm really happy to see this, because yeah, I like that. But you see, the idea, I'm saying that people sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought that most of you are following with me through your laptops or through your mobiles. But the idea, I'm saying that the fashion, sometimes the trend really affects how we look at things. And this is what we say, never has been a single set canon of world literature. The idea he wants to say, there are no fixed canons. There should not be fixed canons. And I think I agree to this. And he said, no single way of reading. Yeah, absolutely. No single way of reading. No single way of teaching. No single way of interpretation. No single way of seeing things. And I think this is good. Absolutely. And notice he said, can be appropriate to all texts or even any text at all times. The variability, and this is the word here, variable. The variability of a work of world literature is one of its constituents, meaning texts, we should always try to find other texts. And this, the question of variable and variability is important here. Again, I think the next paragraph here, he said, a work enters into world literature by a double process. He said, any text can become a world text through two ways, he said. First, by being read as literature. You study this as literature, you think really good and valuable as literature, meaning not gossip, meaning not newspaper, meaning not for fun, okay? And he said, second, by circulating out into a broader world beyond its linguistic and cultural point of origin. So in two ways, you look at it as a literary text, as literature, to study it or to see that this text will travel abroad, meaning will be read abroad, will be taken by other cultures, will be circulated in other places, in other cultures. And I think this is good. And I think I agree to this. So that's what he said. A world text or world literature, any text can become world literature when you look at it as literature. Second, when it is circulated outside its own language, outside its own borders, outside its own nation, its own culture. And I think this is true. Again, notice, a given work can enter into world literature and then fall out of it again if it shifts beyond a threshold point of view, either axis, the literary or the worldly. In other words, not all texts which are read, you know, as world texts will remain there forever. World texts will not always be world texts. Because of this fixity, if you like, there's no fixing or something fixed. And that's really what he means here, that they can change. You know, this is what he means about this, that a text can fall out, can change from being worldly into something else, or not worldly. Again, notice here, over the centuries, an unusually shifty, notice he said, shifty work, meaning changeable, changing work, can come in and out of the sphere of world literature several different times. And at any given point, a work may function as world literature for some readers, but not for others. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you think this, but I don't think it. You know, like in, for example, what even myself, the text that I'm teaching you, my friends in the same, my colleagues here teaching this course don't agree with me. This is it. Because they don't think some of them don't think that these texts are world texts, or they are not anymore world texts. Well, I don't know. I mean, for them, it's up to them. But for me, you know, I think like that. But anyway, look at the last sentence here. Very few works secure a quick and permanent place in the limited company of perennial world masterpieces. Most work over time, even moving into and out of category of the masterpiece. Again, here, notice the word masterpiece. Even they are questioning, or even Damrosch himself is questioning the word masterpiece. And he said, well, what is masterpiece? You know? Again, he's saying, or could be saying, that even the word masterpiece is questionable. It's not always masterpiece, dear. But you see, I don't know. I mean, I happen to believe myself, to be honest with you, I believe in masterpieces. Really, honestly, me, real Mahmoud, yes, I believe that there are masterpieces. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't care. But I believe that there are masterpieces, you know? And some others say maybe no. You know, this is the question here. And I think here in the conclusion, hopefully we can see what he wants to say to us. You know, for God's sake, we've been saying this again and again and again. Notice here, what is world literature? Asking the same question. We've been asking for 3 hours now, or 4 hours last time and today. Again, he said the question is given through these ideas. Notice, circulation, translation, production. Again, this is to do with the question of that. And, you know, really, this is, again, we said that. And again, the question of variability, we have said that about this, about different readers will be obsessed by very different constellations of texts. People will think, think that Dante is a great text, or Kafka, or, you know, whoever is, I don't know. I mean, this is the idea. Now, David Damrosch gave us 3 criteria for him. Notice what he said. World literature is an elliptical refraction of national literatures. And world literature is writing that gains in translation. And world literature is not set canon of text, but a mode of reading, detached engagement with worlds beyond our own place and time. And I think, again, to be honest with you, we have said that before. When he said elliptical refraction of national literatures. And here he explains this. You know, when he said elliptical or refraction, he is saying, meaning, you know, really, they always, you know, change from one position to another. And, you know, comparing it when he said, notice, national. And I think if we try to explain it, notice, elliptical refraction of national literatures, for the past half century, world literature is its North America guises, has usually been opposed to national literature. You know, the idea here, he was to say that many people that world literature is opposed to national literature, but he's saying no, it's something like, you know, he used the word refraction. And he said elliptical, which is really, in a way, very crazy, sort of not clear, hazy sort of reflection. And I think he said that here, if you like, in explanation here. Notice, understanding the term national, works continue to bear the marks of their nation, and so on. I think this is clear. To receive into space of foreign culture, receiving culture can use the foreign material in all sorts of ways. And again, he said, world literature is thus always as much about the host culture's values and needs, and it's about a work of source, hence its double refraction. You know, really, in a way, David Damrosch is playing with language, really, to be honest with you. And even I spoke to him myself, and I told you, I said, come on, man, you did not really, you know, say it clearly, as if to say, you know, when he said elliptical refraction of national, like when you say, come on, national literature should exchange with others, full stop, that's it. National literature should be enriched by other cultures, that's it. Take other cultures' values and needs, and that's it. So why do you say elliptic? And he said double refraction, source culture. You know, he's playing with language here to say, you know, to borrow from other cultures. And, you know, that's what he said. World literature is thus always as much about the host culture, the host culture's values and needs, which means, you know, a national text borrows from other texts because they get benefit from their horizon, from their other language, other culture, and that's it. Why do you say double refraction? You know, he's using these words, as I said, really only to mislead us, I think, to tell us, you know, I know how to say it. Again, you know, when he said, work of literature should be acknowledged as different in kind from within, from work within a national tradition. Again, he said, the specialist is not always in the best position to assess the dramatically different terms in etc. a distant culture. He goes on and on, you know, to say the same thing. Really, all this idea here about, you know, elliptical refraction of national literatures, really one sentence means a national text can benefit from another foreign through its own values, through its own cultures, through its own new ideas, new things. And yes, that's world literature. World literature should have this, you know, should have this attitude of looking into other cultures and acquiring other cultures. That's it. Because when he said world literature is an elliptical refraction. Well, as I'm saying, he's using new or different words really to mean the same thing, which is the exchange of ideas, exchange of thoughts, exchange of values, exchange of morals, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's up to us. The last point, or the second point, he said, world literature is writing that gains in translation. Which means really, if you write a novel in Arabic and you translate it into English and it doesn't feel the same thing, then he said your text is not world text. Again, I think, and I said this to him when he was here. I told him there are horrible translations of Shakespeare into Arabic. I said that to David Damrosch when he was here. I said, when you say that texts gain in translation, if they don't gain, that means they are not world text. I said to him, that's not true, because many Shakespeare were translated into Arabic. It's horrible translation, and really we don't like Shakespeare through these translations. And if you read Shakespeare in English, you know that Shakespeare in English is a world writer. And I would say Shakespeare did not gain in translation. Shakespeare actually lost in translation. So that's what I'm saying here. David Damrosch is saying world literature is writing that gains in translation, meaning when you are translated, you are known better, you gain more, and people will learn and will understand you more. Well, I don't know. Again, I say to you here, for example, the Quran, the Quran in Arabic, Al-Quran Kareem in Arabic, for example, nobody will ever understand the language of the Quran unless he knows absolutely good Arabic, isn't it? In translation will never be the same. It's never the same. So I will say the Quran did not win in translation, according to my friend here about what he said. World literature is writing that gains in translation. Notice he said a text is read as literature. Yeah?
I think he means like a world literature piece is one that like is needed to the fact that people like want these texts
I know you.
so that they are translated. He doesn't specifically talks about the translation or the type of translation, because most pieces are like better in their original forms.
Well, of course. So, but he said texts should gain, when they are translated, they should gain, meaning they should become more powerful. Is that what you're saying? Hajar?
Yes, maybe I understood differently.
Sorry? You mean you understood?
Maybe I understood.
Yeah.
Yes, I understood.
It's okay. Okay, thank you for speaking. Yeah. Anyway, I know the time is up, and you are really great people. I like you. You are. I have here 39 people. I have only two people away. I don't know. Let me see again if. Yeah, where is let me now as I said, I think I will stop here. I will conclude this because I have only just one page. Oh, 3 pages. I will quickly do that next time, no problem. But really it's the same thing here. Damrosch is not giving, to be honest with you, is not giving something extra important or extra clear, extra new, I should say. But anyway, this is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with me today. And as I told you, this lecture, as usual, is going to be posted on Moodle as a video, and you can go back to it anytime you like. So that's why I'll stop here and goodbye, and I'll see you next time, inshallah. Anyway,